Blueprinting irons. Let's talk about blueprinting some irons. I have some irons from Illinois, and the golfer says they are jacked up and wants them checked out. Let's see what that is next. Welcome back to the McGolf Shop. Jim McCleary here, and this is McGolf channel where we talk about golf club repairs, golf club reviews, and golf club fittings, all so your scores can go low. Like, subscribe, hit that stuff across the bottom. That way this stuff gets out to the YouTube universe. Also, join me on Mondays, 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 17:30. What's in my drawers golf talk? It's a live stream. Talk about the same stuff. It is very casual, very easy to get on, and join us YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and now X, if you're so inclined. YouTube and Facebook first. All right, so blueprinting. Let's go back and see what the problem is here. All righty, so he has a set of 245s. Okay, a set of 245s, and the 245s are Mizuno's. They're the hollow bodies, and they came with some Project X 6.0. 6.0s are basically, we're going to say X-Flex. That's their X-Flex designation, okay? Now, when we talk about rifle shafts, and we do this, I am an advanced rifle center here. I'm was one of two in the state. I might be the only one now. That was back when rifle was rifle before they became true temper. The way that you worked on those was using a twisting wheel, and there was tons of calculations in order to be able to figure it out. And it all had to do with hosel depth, the bottom to ground bore, the frequency that you wanted at, swing weight, length. There's a lot of stuff that went into calculating this particular shaft. Well, the True Temper has simplified it up a little bit. So here we are now. He says that they don't feel right. Some feel hard. Some feel too long. They felt, they basically felt awful. But there was a 7-iron at his golf club that was in the demo rack, and he hits that thing, stripes it like nobody's business. Okay, so what do? Well, he sent me all those clubs plus the demo. Okay, so now what we have to do is we have to measure the clubs. So what is blueprinting? Blueprinting is basically measuring the club, and there's different levels of blueprinting depending on what you want to get out of it. What I started off with is what I call simple blueprinting. Simple blueprinting is just getting the specs of a completed club. Length, loft, lie, total weight, frequency, that kind of stuff. And let's just see if the easy stuff can be found first. If I find one of those specifications totally out of whack, then you have to go to a more detailed blueprinting, which now requires you to take the club apart, and you got to start measuring head weights, shaft weights, start talking about hosel depths, those kinds of things. Now, if you really want to get into an expert blueprinting and you really want to know everything to the nth degree, now you're talking about measuring offsets, grooves, widths of the top line. There's just a whole lot of stuff that can be measured on a head. It takes a long time. You have to have certain kinds of equipment. Not very many people do that. All right. In fact, hardly anybody does that detailed. But the rest of it is, every one of those things I look at, other than the last two for the expert, when I go to put them together. So I'm kind of blueprinting them as I put them together. All right. So this golfer says, do what you need to do. So what I did was I took the demo. This is not the demo. This is the regular clubs. I took the demo and I popped the grip off, so I could have a naked swing weight, a naked length, the frequency, the lofts and lies, the whole 9 yards. And then I measured the 7-iron with the grip. Well, I measured them both with the grip on and got some numbers, and they were off. They were off. The original, or the one that came with the set, was 2 swing weight points higher. The grip wasn't put on all the way. It was really squishy at the top. I don't know what that was all about. And then when I went to measure them and put them in the length and lie, the length and the lie weren't very good, and they weren't anywhere near the spec. So that's what we have to do. So what do we got to do? Well, first we got to take off all the grips. We got to start from ground zero, a naked golf club, right? Why? Because a grip is we'll say, is a added dimension to the club. It lowers what would be the frequency on this particular club, and what I call is an adjuster or a modifier. And so we just want to start everything equal with nothing getting in the way, and that's taking the grip off. So how do we do that? Well, there's a couple ways. The first way is blowing it off. Now, everybody's out there talking on the internet how easy it is to blow off a grip, how easy it is to put it back on, and all that stuff. So I figured I'd give it a shot. Well, here we are taking this thing off. And I had it at 100 pounds of pressure, which is way too much. And you can see it expound the middle of the grip. And when the middle of the grip gets big, and then it's still got to push the air all the way to the end. Once it pushes the air to the end, it collapses, and then I'm able to squish the air and pull it off. That is the con to blowing off a grip, particularly a grip that was put on with tape. All right, if you put it on with tape, that's what you're going to see, because you've got to separate the grip from the tape. That's how you're going to get this thing off. All right, so we did that a couple of times, and I cranked down the air pressure in order not to make that happen so much. The other way of doing this is by blowing it off with solvent. You use a needle gun and solvent. That is my preferred method. Now, the con on this, it's messy. Okay, it is messy. It sprays out when you're not watching. It gets out in the end and it takes off across the bench, but it doesn't deform the grip nearly like blowing it off on the other ones. So what we do is we put the needle in the end, and I always put my finger over the end because I want to clamp down on it to prevent it from allowing any pressure that I'm going to put in there to escape. And I also put my thumb over the weep hole. And what that does is that shoots this solvent down there and also creates this pressure in order to expand that grip to allow the solvent to get through. And as the solvent gets through, it kind of pushes itself down to the end of the grip until it gets out. And then you kind of just twist it off. Now, am I 100% successful with it? No. There's always been a couple extra grips that are always ornery. So grips that have 2-3 layers on them, like wind grips, that kind of stuff, synthetic grips, do not like. I've done them, I've taken them off, but they're hard on the needle. All right. But the regular rubber grips, any of that kind of stuff, easy peasy. I'm about 98% to the good. Alrighty, so that's taking them off. Now we have to contend with the tape. All right, the tape it has to come off, right? And it depends on the types of tape. Now there is what I call a water-soluble tape, which is used in a lot of OEMs, so they don't have to deal with solvents or chemicals. It's not very easy to take off once it's there, and it looks just like this real fuzzy skin when you have to take off when you take the grip off. I'm not a fan of that stuff, only because I work on a lot of clubs. If I was just assembling and didn't worry about them, yeah, it'd be a thing. The other way is that you have to heat it up in order to get the sticky part reactivated. When it's reactivated, it's really easy to take off. So you take a knife and you lay it flat and you pull it down the length of the club and you basically strip it off like a banana. That's easy when you're blowing them off because there's no solvent. That was easy. When you have solvent, you want to use the heat gun, and that'll dry up the solvent so you can actually grip it and pull it off. All right. Now that we've got that, we have to do some measuring now. Now we're ready to go, right? We got to measure. So we got to do some length and swing weight and some frequencies. What is frequency? Frequency is nothing more than a digital measure of flex. Now we can talk the pluses and minuses of frequency versus strain. That's not what this is about. It's about measuring. So I can measure this and have an apples to apples comparison. That's the trick of this whole thing. So I go and I measure them, and turns out they're on the 3/4. So what do I mean by that? 37 3/4, 37 1/4, 36 3/4, 36 1/4, and so on. All right, up and down the chart. And it absolutely marries up with that demo club. And so all the length on these clubs were very, very, very good. All right, next we do the swing weights. And the swing weights all came out to E2, except for one, which was E1. One swing weight point nobody's going to notice. Okay, nobody. And we noticed that. So if you go to put on this grip and you go to put it on, it's a really good, pardon me, it's a really good theory to practice, right? We've always said adding another 4 grams to the back would subtract a swing weight. Well, these turned out to be 51 grams to 52 grams. So call it 50 grams just for easy math. That's around 10 going on 12 swing weight points. All right, so this E2 should be a D0, except you're going to have to add some length because of the grip cap, and that's going to add some back. Length is way easier to add swing weight to. And then we'll see about what it turned out at the end. Okay, then we do the frequency. Now, frequency is when in my chart, and each chart's different for each machine, but what I found was they were decently consistent. They weren't absolutely consistent, but decently consistent. Okay, now on to the lofts and the lies. So I go find the specs that the golfer sent me. They matched up to what I found, and so we went with that. Now, these are bad. These are messed up. Most of the lofts were in pretty good shape. I had 1 or 2 that were not. One was off by 2 degrees, which was kind of unique for a Mizuno. Normally their loft angles are very, very good. The lie angles, not so much. They need to be adjusted, and this was no different. They are all standard. Now, the funny part about this is that that demo club has a button on the back to say what it is, and it said it was standard, and there's no way. There's no way it was standard. That thing was 2 degrees up, and that's the reason why this cat was being able to hit it, okay? So we go in there and we start bending irons. We bend it for loft, we bend it for lie angle first and then loft second, normally because we didn't have to touch it too much. You want to take it very nice and slow, use both hands if you can, in order to get the lie angle to go. Now, the big thing about these guys is their construction. At the top end, they have that chromoly, or that it's a more firmer steel, so it's a little harder to bend. You get down to the bottom, it's a little easier to bend. And so we go through the entire set, and now we've got them. Loft and lies are exactly where they need to be. We got the length of where we need them to be. We know what the frequencies are. It's all good. So now what do we got to do? Well, I called the golfer to make sure that was all we needed to do. I told him we were really, really close. And the reason why things were all jacked up was because the loft and lies were off and the grips were put on poorly. Everything else was fine. I said, so we're going to put these back on. Now, he sent some grips for me. He sent some grips with them, not enough. So there's 1 grip in there that I reused, and I'm not telling him where I put it. And that way he won't freak out when he goes to grab them. Now we got to put the grips on. Simple grip install. We're using the solvent and the tape method. I'm not blowing them back on, mostly because I had the used grip. I want to make sure that they all feel the same, they all go on the same, they're all seated the same. Now that could be a con of a blowing them on. If you don't get them all the way on, and then you're having to mess it around and use a lot of air to push these things on. That's the reason why I like solvent. Once you get it on there, you can tap it and actually force a little bit more into it. Maybe there's the pro and the con for gripping. All right, now once we get that, we have to re-verify. We re-verify that what the swing weights are. And with the grips being ever so slightly different, just in weight from that 1 gram, the use of some of the tape, and you would think that all these swing weights would be exactly the same. Well, not really. They are very, very close. They're within 1.5 of each other, but they're not exactly like they would with the grip off. That's the reason why we do this. And we look at it, and then the total weight, right? I do the total weight with everything because it's total weight. And the total weights were not necessarily in line as one would think. Some were very close and very heavy. So now what we're looking at is how the weight through here is distributed on the golf club between a high iron and a low iron, and where it's going. Is it more on the toe? Is it more on the heel? Is it more in the center? It can affect how these things swing weight out and how that would affect the way that this club feels. However, it all came out very, very nice. The golfer is really happy with the results, and as you can see as I'm putting these all together, they're very, very stable. Alrighty, so That was blueprinting in a nutshell. Remember, you have a basic blueprinting, just the regular stuff, and then you have the what we call a very detailed blueprinting, which is tearing down the clubs to parade rest, measuring everything you can possibly do, and then if you're going to put them back and you want them to an exact or very, very close, that might be adding weight, that might be drilling some stuff out, those kinds of things. So now you know what blueprinting is. Again, if you liked it, like and subscribe. Don't forget our live stream, and as always, let's see your scores go low.